As I said, my name is Lee Martin. I'm from Cofense. We are an email security company. We work in front of and behind your secure email gateway. My job is to help build resilient employees, to help make your employees resilient to real cyber threats, especially those that are mediated by email. So today we're going to go over a brief introduction about how Cofense works, what we do, and then I'm going to talk to you about AI in general, AI tools in particular, and specific types of AI tools. And then I've got two different content creation case studies. I'm going to walk you through creating an AI-mediated infographic to teach you how to avoid credential phishing. It's just something really simple. And then we're also going to use some tools to map an actual voice actor into a metahuman in Unreal Engine and show you how to do that. So this is to really, once again, give you an idea of what benefit these tools can give to your existing workflows, rather than training you exactly how to do it step by step. So if you get a little confused, there's not a test at the end. Don't worry, I'm not going to be like, okay, everybody, pull out your laptop and let's make some magic. But if somebody does that, I want to talk to you later because I might have a job for you. So Cofense, we've been around for quite a while. We have our hallmark security awareness program called PhishMe. PhishMe was the very first commercial email simulator for the enterprise space that was out there. So what this does is send simulated malicious emails out to your employees' mailboxes and train them on how to avoid those type of email-mediated threats. Every single year, it gets harder and harder. Malicious emails have fewer and fewer indicators of compromise embedded in them. You know, if you go back 14 years, they were really easy to spot. You'd be like, half the words are misspelled and this is incoherent. Now they're very sophisticated, and with natural language generation AI models, they get better every day. I'm a linguist by trade, and we're looking at stuff that there is no indicator. It's starting to blur the line between social engineering, et cetera, but we're staying ahead of that game. We have a global network of millions of reporters who report suspicious emails, and that feeds into our threat intelligence platform. Our threat intelligence platform is what I use to build training content off of. So SAT, phishing defense and response, that's what Cofense does in a nutshell. So PhishMe is where all of my magic happens in most cases, and it bases up content delivery in two different ways. And this is context for what we're going to be talking about here in terms of AI content creation workflows. So imagine a two-pronged content delivery. In part one, I'm going to send you a simulated email. If you're really good, you're going to say, this looks suspicious to me, so I'm going to hit my reporter button in my email client and report it to my SOC. If I'm convinced it's safe and I interact with it, I'm going to get a piece of education that says, this was a phishing simulation. Here's what you missed. Here's what you should have learned. Our entire ethic is not punitive. My goal, my whole career for the last 9 years has really been about deputizing employees to be part of the SOC. Even if you're in accounting, you're part of the SOC. If you're in customer care, you're part of the SOC. We don't want to have a punitive approach where our tool can be used to punish somebody for making a mistake, because eventually that will build a culture in your company of hiding things. Something weird has happened. I don't know if I'm compromised or not, but I don't want to tell anybody because I know I'm going to get in trouble. This is going to lead to worse levels of compromise in the long run. So it's a very forward-leaning piece where we want everybody engaged, and we want to incentivize folks to engage in the right way. So here's just a slide with some examples of what some of the different variety of post-simulation educations we could get. And you'll see there's quite a lot of, I don't know if this laser thing works here. Don't know how to do it. Anyway, I've got a whole lot of different things here, a lot of ways that we can interact with your learner population. There's a tremendous amount of diversity in learner populations inside of one big enterprise company, but if you look at all of them, there's a fantastic amount of diversity. Some customers have very mature workforces who are, and their culture is pretty uptight, if you will pardon the phrase. Some of them are really into humor or really want something engaging. And so the mandate that I've given to my team in producing this content is, no matter what style or what level of learning attainment you're working at, you want to make memories that are durable. A durable memory can lead to a behavioral outcome that you want. Behavioral outcomes lead to habits, and habits lead to culture. A culture of cybersecurity resiliency is what we are all about. So building a piece of content that you can really engage with is going to bury that memory deep. So some of these are quite silly. Some of them are quite serious. But everything on this page has had some aspect of an AI tool in its making. They all look very different. We'll get into a couple of options here that we're going to talk about. But first, I want to talk about, what is AI? So we hear about it all the time. It's everywhere. It's a very big topic. There are probably several of us in this meeting room right now that could argue about the discrete definition of artificial intelligence, how far it goes, where does it stop, etc. But what we're really going to talk about here is generative AI. And forgive me for all of you who already are using multiple generative AI tools. Some of this may feel a little bit elementary. Generative AI tools are artificial intelligence that's going to be able to use what feels like human decision-making to generate an outcome. That could be speech, that could be images, that could be video clips, etc. I was talking with my VP of product yesterday and said that the models are here for a future where I could take my favorite novel, give that to a generative AI tool, and tell it to build me a 3D movie of this book. And I think the only thing that's holding us back is compute power at this point. We can do this in little snippets now already. So if we were to make an analogy to the automotive industry, we're at the level of those first like Stanley Steamer cars, but we're still in the automotive area. In 20 years, 20 months, it's just galloping forward in terms of progress. So, I've got to delay that. All right, so from there, if anybody's ever played with an AI generator, I'm putting this somewhat disturbing image up here, you'll know that you can say, make somebody's hands holding beads and marbles, and it'll give you somebody with about 16 fingers. The AI thinks it knows what human fingers look like, but it doesn't really know what they're for. It's doing pattern matching. So AI can give you some very strange results if you don't know how to insinuate it into your content creation workflow. It's just going to produce what it produces. What I'm going to show you here is that it's an important part, but it's not a silver bullet. It's not a panacea. It's just a really good tool. It can also produce really outstanding results. This is from our Cybersecurity Awareness Month training where you've got Sherlock Holmes looking at a QR code through a magnifying glass. This is really delightful and nice, but this was not the output of one AI prompt. Create this, and it just came out like this. It has to go through multiple levels of refinement, and we'll walk through some examples of how to do that. And then sometimes you'll have a piece that you won't even know is AI at all. This looks nothing like an AI-generated piece of art. This little fella down here in the corner is actually an AI avatar that's reading a script that's working through the indicators of a fish and showing this learner exactly what they should have been looking for a malicious email. So there's a wide variety of things that you could be able to accomplish with a good AI toolkit. Okay, so what are some of the things that we can gain with AI tools? We can add speed to your development and publication cadence. And I think that this is the thing this is why it's the first bullet. Some of the things that I'm going to show you, if you were to do them manually, or if you were to create digital art, but from a human artist, the outcomes sometimes could be really outstanding, or even better, but they're going to take quite a long time. In a lot of publication or publication houses, speed is everything. Speed to market is really important. So being able to deliver a super fantastic output in a fraction of the time is really money, and it's very, very valuable. So speed to development and publication cadence is key. 2 years ago, we were using one AI tool at Cofense in content creation. Now I'm using 14 different tools, and our output has quintupled in terms of titles. In addition to that, we can create results that were a little bit unattainable in the past. So this is a Formula One race car that's got the Cofense logo on it that we actually built in Unreal Engine 5. We were able to build this in a morning. if we were to build this in Adobe Illustrator, 10 years ago, this would have taken a long time to do, and it would have been very difficult to get the same level of quality in the result. So the actual results, when I say unattainable, they're attainable, but at a time frame that's unacceptable most of the time. It also allows you to create more ambitious projects at a lower cost. We created, for one of the pieces that we'll look at later in this prezo, an entire city in Unreal Engine 5 that's in sort of a cyberpunk environment. To be able to pitch this in a non-AI space would have been almost impossible, just 5-6 years ago. But we're able to do this and turn it around. We actually released a title around deepfakes, training against deepfake avoidance. And it took us 2 months to create something that the previous iteration took 11 months to create. And this is all because of the use of AI, augmentation of the workflow. So I'm going to talk about some different tool categories. This is just a small sample. And probably by the time you get home, it could be obsolete. My lead instructional designer and I were having a meeting on Wednesday, and she was like, I'm using a tool this week that I switched to last week. There's already another one in the hopper to potentially take its place that is producing better results. This is a very dynamic space. So the first one that I want to talk about is NLGs, or natural language generators. Of course, the example I'm going to use is GPT-4. GPT-5 is right on the horizon coming up. So this class of tools is something that you can give it a language prompt and say, write me a short story, about X. And it's going to generate something for you. You can even ask it questions. What I've found is it often sounds extraordinarily confident in giving you a 70% correct answer, but rarely a correct answer completely. They're getting better all the time. AI-powered image generation. So in this talk, we're going to be talking about Stable Diffusion and Firefly. Stable Diffusion is the one that produces right now for us some of our best results. It's something you do have to compile locally. It's not one of those easy web-based tools, but its output is really outstanding. These tools also take text-based inputs, and I'm going to teach you how to do that in Stable Diffusion, and can take reference images as well to combine to produce some output that you want. We'll use Stable Diffusion in one of the case studies to create a training infographic. In addition, we have also some AI-powered video creation tools. Synesthesia and Unreal Engine are two of the ones that we're focused on right now. And for this talk, I'm really going to dive in a little bit deeper into Unreal Engine 5 and an application called LiveLink later in the talk. This is, once again, just the tip of the iceberg. Synesthesia is really a really cool tool because you can actually feed it scripts, and their AI avatars will read it back to you. And I've used them on some of our folks inside Cofense who think, well, that's a real person, and it's not. And it's pretty fantastic on what you can do with Synesthesia. They're a great company out of Ireland. So the first thing I want to talk about is infographics. So these are some examples of some of the infographics that Cofense has published just in the last couple of months. They start in Victorian England in terms of a setting and end up in, the next frontier over here with Fish Trek. So there's multiple uses for these. Some of these are used as a post-phishing simulation education. So I clicked on the link of the simulation. I'm going to get something that's going to talk to me about a credential phish. It's going to talk to me about a specific cybersecurity learning objective. Every one of these was built with a combination of AI tools. Some of our customers actually print these out, put them up in the office. It's part of a larger and broader awareness program. And the market demand on Cofense for a steady stream of publication has gone from a trickle, like I'd like 2 or 3 of these a year, to I want a new one every month, to I ran this last week, what's the next one? So the more I feed the engine, the hotter it gets, the more it wants, and the more demands I have on my team to be able to produce a super high quality output in the shortest amount of time possible. That led us to starting to use AI tools to generate these. In the past, we were actually using Adobe Creative Cloud to manually produce every single one of our infographics, and we would publish about 6 a year. We're producing close to 45 a quarter now. So we are really focused on developing that in that cadence. So the first thing that we want to look at is when we're dealing with image generation is the notion of a prompt. Everybody probably knows what this word means in English. You know, it's like an actor on the stage who forgot their line. Somebody's going to prompt them on stage of like what their line is. It's a similar concept. We're going to prompt Stable Diffusion with what we want, and we're going to start with an affirmative prompt. Affirmative prompt is going to tell the AI tool what it is that you're trying to create. So this input is going to need to be descriptive, and it's not, if you just went and told it, I want you to make an image of the Jolly Green Giant, you're going to get back something really, really weird. So you have to be really specific in how you give these input prompts to the AI to get back something that approximates what you want. So how do you do that? You're going to use a concept called prompt weighting. So this is where you're going to, through formatting, be able to tell the tool what parts of this prompt do I want you to pay more attention to than others. The way you do that in Stable Diffusion is you can actually do it with a number where you can use like ADS and increase the weight a certain specific amount of times. But what we more commonly do is do nested parentheses. I'm going to show you an example of what we actually used in the real world to create a template for an infographic that is sort of an homage to the Netflix show Stranger Things. Has everybody seen Stranger Things? Okay, this is I wanted to use something that most folks would know what it is, so that when we see the prompts, you might giggle at how specific we have to be to not get something really, really strange. So, for example, on this one, Stranger Things, I'm putting in 3 nested parentheses because I want that to have the most weight of any word that I use. Okay, just as an example. Here's an example prompt, and I'm going to read through this, not because I think you're illiterate, just because it gets kind of amusing. So, best quality, realistic, ultra high res, high resolution. Isn't that redundant? Yes, it is, but this is pattern matching. It's not reading it like a human, it's reading it like a machine. Triple parentheses, hyper realistic painting. It's got all the artistic types in the world known to humans to choose from. You need to be super specific about telling it what type of artwork you want. Stranger Things, 3 parentheses. A girl with short dark hair, do your best. On a laptop, because we want to put this in a different context. We're teaching you about credential phishing here. Several other characters. I'm going to keep that vague and let the AI do its worst, right? Epic, but only 2 parentheses. Poster, because it's an infographic, I want the layout to not have to be messed with as much as possible. Backdrop of neon lights, glowing orb, lighting, triple parentheses, 1980s. Science fiction aesthetics, fantasy aesthetics. Now, no one's expectation should be that they go back to their team that's creating content and say, day 1, create a prompt like this. This only comes after we started trying to use these tools and realizing right off the bat, whoa, our output is pretty terrible. We have to be able to learn how to refine it. If somebody had been able to give us an example of a prompt that would work off the bat, like I'm giving to you now, it would have saved us about 1.5 months of development churn trying to work through it. So this is an example of an affirmative prompt. And I'm going to, like I said, it's not going to interrupt my flow if somebody asks questions, but does this make sense to everybody? You just nod your head. Okay, good. Yes? Is it okay to take pictures or like? Absolutely. Yeah, pirate whatever you want. So y'all can, I'm an OSS guy, so just, yeah, good, okay. So what we found also is that making an affirmative prompt that's that specific is still going to give you some weird results. And you're going to need to do the same thing, but in the negative. Now, for Stable Diffusion, the good thing is it doesn't have a different weighting cadence for negative than it does affirmative. So luckily, if once you master affirmative, you can do the same thing with negative. And you want to weight the same thing. So I have an example here of things that you don't want it to be. So I don't want sketches. For some reason, Stable Diffusion always wants to give me some sort of charcoal or pencil drawing. It's never good. So we found right off the bat, sketches, don't want it. Worst quality. I hate that I have to tell it this, but don't give me something that looks terrible, because it often will. Low quality, normal quality, I'm specifying with 2 weightings, don't give me those things. Low res, normal quality, monochrome, it will give you black and white results if you want something with a lot of color. Now this is where it gets funny. Skin spots, acne, skin blemishes, age spots. It's looked at human skin in thousands of images, so it doesn't know that a little kid wouldn't have the skin of a 90-year-old person. So you need to specify this. Now it also starts to be telling where the AI is weak. Distorted finger, amputation, missing hands and fingers. It starts to get amusing. Extra hand and finger, double face, double hands. The AI doesn't know what a human is. It's just doing pattern matching, so you have to spell this out. Ugly face, out of frame, crooked fingers, extra legs, mutated hands. This is all trial and error, folks. We learned the hard way that if you can expel these things from the AI, you start getting things that look like the real deal, very close to your first try. So, yes, sir.
Mix of the lot and two together.
Yes, you do. So, excellent question. I'll ask you up for the next case study to help me. So, so this is actually a screenshot of the Stable Diffusion operating console, and you'll notice that right here I've got my positive affirmative prompts, and down here I've got my negative. And I've got that big tempting orange generate button. Who thinks we're ready to generate now? No, not quite. Okay. I always want to push that button, but I always have to remember we're going to do one more thing. So there's a plugin for Stable Diffusion that handles what's called reference images. So we've given it all that specificity. Now we're going to give it pictures from the real world that we want it to look like. So if you have a design ethic in your head, and even better if you have one that you're looking to kind of copy or give an homage, then you can use an operation within Stable Diffusion to put in, it's called ControlNet. ControlNet handles reference images. It also handles posing of animated features. So it actually is quite powerful, but it's a plugin that goes with Stable Diffusion. And you can see here, I've got 6 images. These are all from the real world that I want to sort of inspire, give the AI an idea of what we're going for. These just happen to be posters for the real Stranger Things. So now we're ready to generate, see what happens. It's going to give us a couple of different options. It's probably going to drop 2 or 3, but I'm going to choose one to start looking at. This is the first one that it gives us. Remember how much we told it, don't do weird hands? And yet, this looks a little bit more like a flipper than a hand. It's still really strange. Some of the skin looks really strange on some of these kids, and they also kind of look like clones of each other. They're not distinct enough from each other. So that tells us that we're going to have to do some extra work on this. Well, it also gave us 2 other ones, and we're going to do some further editing here. This is where you need a human being. So you're going to have these unacceptable AI outputs, but in them is the ingredients for something that's really good. So when I go through this, I might generate 2, 3, 4 times, look through several different outputs, and find ones that I like. I put it in bold. Rarely, and I probably should have said never, but I'm an engineer, I don't like saying never, so it could happen. Generated images are almost never suitable right when they come out, but they're going to give you ingredients to make something good. So here's 3 outputs from the same prompt. And I was looking at this like, what's different? Well, this one at least got the laptop that I told it I really needed. This one added the store and bicycles that I didn't say anything about. This one has a car in it that's kind of cool. I really like these trees that are on the side because it gives it some depth. So I'm starting to see the ingredients that I want. And so in Photoshop and in Firefly and Adobe, we can excise some of the elements out and make our initial background image. And now we're going to start building layers for our infographic. I really like the image with the laptop. I told them right up front that's what I needed. And I did really like those trees. And those trees give a depth of image. If we're able to layer all of those together, we end up with our final image. And there's a lot of light in here, so you can't see some of the detail on this. But we're still not ready to publish. I've had a human being instead of spending a week building all of these different artistic assets separately, this has come together in a morning. So now we're needing to add copy. So this is an educational piece. So we're going to add the educational content that we need to this infographic. And this is what it's going to look like at the end. And walking you through how we started this from an AI perspective, if you wanted to, depending on the application, for us it's not appropriate, but if you had a natural language generator available to you, that was running locally maybe, because you could run them in your own data center, you could generate the text with an AI and then edit it. The longer the text is, the more time you save. I really want to, I'll say this in I think my second to the last slide is some considerations when using tools and how to use them safely. Really, really be cautious when you're doing natural language generation, because oftentimes you may be sharing things that you shouldn't if you're not running it locally and don't control the AI yourself. So before I move to the second case study, does anybody else have any questions on this? Does this all make sense on how this all comes together? And do you see how this could really speed up not the cadence of your publication, but also the quality? Because this person that created this would have zero artistic ability. I don't need a visual artist to create this. I need more of a web developer, and they're sometimes easier to find. So, yes. Uh-huh.
You just reference, like, if you continue the prompt to say, I want to reference these other images, and I like this in the added image. Is the background
So yes, you could. You could use those as reference images, but what we find is that it takes a little bit too much license, and it starts doing things that are just 3 steps beyond what you want to ask it to do. When we get to that point, usually, so this is, like I said, we're publishing maybe 40 of these, per quarter. We know what model we want this to look at, how this is going to show up in FishMe. So our publication specialist in this case is going to be knowing in his head or her head exactly how this needs to fit together. Once you get to those smaller cuts, the AI will take a shot at it, and there's always a chance that it could give you something you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. But for our workflow, once we get to that last level, a human makes it faster, because usually you'll have to say generate, reject, and then finally get something you could work with. So good question though, thank you. So the next topic that I'm going to discuss is a little bit different. Instead of having a text-driven prompt, we're actually going to shift gears completely and talk about 3D animation. So when I told you that Cofense has a wide variety of content, 3 years ago we started dabbling in Unreal Engine 4. We've since doubled down and are building whole curriculum in Unreal Engine 5, which, if you're not familiar with Unreal Engine, it is a game engine that's built by Epic Games. It's incredibly powerful. It allows you to generate full 3D environments, and now it allows you to generate digital humans. The tool that they use to create digital humans is called MetaHuman. They have a MetaHuman generator. Just a show of hands, has anybody heard of MetaHumans before? Okay. Nerd. I'm just kidding. I appreciate it. Okay. So for those of you who have not heard of a MetaHuman, for you it might be old hat. These are hyper-realistic digital humans. And you're saying, well, why do you need a hyper-realistic digital human? If any of you have ever shot video on DV, much less if anybody here has ever shot on film, the costs go bonkers. You have to have lighting. You have to have cameras. You have to have stock. You have to pay actors. You have to find a location. You have to get permits. Filming just a real human being on video education to tell them to make sure to lock your computer when you go to the bathroom is a horrendous waste of money. And it takes a long time to create. You can create the same impact from a learning perspective in a digital environment. And in a lot of cases, you can contextualize it with novel things that will embed that memory even further. So, this is a weird picture, but like, here's a metahuman on the side here, and then this strange coloring here is what we're going to call the mesh. It's a mesh overlay of the face. This is going to incorporate different muscular levels, their teeth, their lips, their tongue, the flaring of their nostrils. It's incredibly detailed on what you're able to do. And just 2 years ago, and I've got one slide that sort of shows you where we were 2 years ago versus where we are now, it's continuing to gallop along with other AI tools. There's a lot of variety in what you can build a metahuman to look like. So you can be multiple ethnicities, you can be multiple ages, genders, expression, etc. You can just do whatever you want. You can also take assets out of Unreal Engine, develop them in something like Maya, and actually import them, or Blender. We do this a lot where we build things from scratch, import them in, and incorporate them into the metahuman. So we make this lady's hair purple in this case, and a different shape than what the normal hair would be. It works really well. So we, in 2021, I wrote a overly long script called The Cyber Life of Veronique, which was a cyberpunk-inspired education where an office worker was imagining fighting cybercrime in her imagination, and she took on an alter ego with a purple mohawk, and yeah, it's really fun. But we built it all in Unreal Engine, and we started it with just having a voice actor and keyframe animating every single frame of the metahuman to try and make their lip sync with the voice actress. It took us 11 months. It was incredibly difficult. And even at the end of it, the lip sync in some of the scenes, I was like, when I look at it now, I'm like wanting to hide my face because it's not as good as what we wanted to do. Unreal Engine came out with a tool called Live Link that with a cell phone, we're able to capture the image of our voice actress, in this case, Shire, who you'll see on the next slide, who we've worked with for a couple of years. And I'm going to be able to build a mesh over her face. From that mesh, I'm going to build a metahuman. And from that metahuman, I'm going to model that into our character, into Veronique. And I'll show you that here in a second. So let me see if this will play. This is just a short clip, barely a GIF, of how we can scan over her face, come back and overlay the mesh that we're going to build. And this is sped up. Obviously, this takes a bit of compute. And bring down the opacity so that you can see it's got perfect fidelity to her face. And this is what's going to really help us in terms of creating a very realistic lip sync. It's also going to allow us to capture her facial expressions while she's acting out the role. I'd done some directing in front of a camera before, but I'd never done direction over a Zoom call in somebody's closet while we captured her video performance. But that's absolutely what we're doing nowadays. So it's really exciting. So we tried this before. If I can get the sound to come out through these speakers, just bear with me. She's going to say a little bit of audio, and you'll be able to see, and it's a little dark, Shire, the real actor, talking, her mesh talking, and then her metahuman extraction talking as well. So,
Neo Cyber City can be a rough place, and you never know what form danger may take. You ever hear the one about the cybermorph and the deepfake? Yeah, it's a real page turner.
So we were able to capture that all automatically through the LiveLink software instead of going frame by frame at 24 frames per second, manipulating the metahuman to get this animation in place. So what took us 11 months before, we were able to do in 2. And it brought us a lot closer to the type of goals that we're looking for in terms of outcome. So in this one, I've added on the progression. So I've got the actor the mesh, the metahuman, and then the final character here over on the side. We'll try this.
Neo Cyber City can be a rough place, and you never know what form danger may take. You ever hear the one about the cybermorph and the deepfake? Yeah, it's a real page turner.
So as you can see, you have a ton of fidelity between what the expression the actor is bringing to what you're actually animating. And it's not just like putting them in a rig. I don't know if any of you have seen the making of Avatar where you have a full bodysuit, or Lord of the Rings where Gollum is wearing like a unitard with a whole bunch of sensors on there. We're able to not get that level, but very close, and you're able to do it with very cheap customer, end user equipment. Yes. Yes, she's a real person in her closet. Talking to us over a cell phone while we capture this. So we coach her through one performance, and then she did, and that was just over a Zoom call. So we do one rehearsal, and then she uses the live link software on her phone to capture her performance alone. She uploads that to us, and then our digital animators take it from there. So this is a progression from our 2022-2023 MetaHuman version of Veronique versus our 2024. And it may not look like it's that much difference, but it's gone a long way. And I'm going to show you just a real quick 2-minute trailer of the one that we just published so you can see the end result. And is it we can get that sound on us? We'll see.
Neo Cyber City can be a rough place, and you never know what form danger may take. You ever hear the one about the cybermorph and the deepfake?
Are you in or are you out?
Yeah, it's a real page turner.
So that's just a single video education that we have in Cofense. This is one of the many styles that we're building on, and because of these tools, we're able to build them at a cadence that's acceptable. We couldn't burn another 11 months doing some of these more cutting edge pieces, and right now we're working on a Formula One racing game in Unreal Engine. So we've built a whole series of race cars, a racetrack. We've actually made the opposing cars on the track representative of different cyber threats. So there's a ransomware car, there's a credential phish car. To pass the different cyber threats, you're going to have to, in real time, answer a question. If you answer it correctly, you make the pass. If you don't, they block you. And so there's a game-based learning component to this. It is all made possible by these tools that assist you in the animation process and get you through some of those lumps, because doing it manually, just like sketching with a pencil, you can get a great result. I don't know if you've seen some people with a pencil and a piece of paper, that's all they need, and they can produce amazing output, but you can't do it at scale. And we have a very small team. I have one major animator for the whole world that we're developing all this, and we're still able to put out a really good cadence of publications. Actually, before I move on to some considerations, did this case study make sense to everybody? Does any further questions on that? Yes, sir.
In terms of in terms of hardware resource, what do you guys run into?
You probably need an NVIDIA 3080 minimum on your GPU. When I started down this, I did end up writing a business case to my chief financial officer to buy us 3 production boxes, because it wasn't just the primary animator, it was also the editor. Our team had to all work on it. So you do need a beefy machine, especially when you get into the level of rendering. The actual animation is not that heavy, but when you start putting that whole environment together and rendering big sections of video, it will put a crunch on your machine. So a really robust GPU is good. The good thing is that, I mean, they're super expensive right now, but a lot of the GPU heavy crypto mining boxes, they're becoming a little bit more accessible. They're out there if they're not sold out. So that trailer I think that Kareem took about 11 minutes to render the whole thing. Yeah, but that was just the trailer for the piece. The other one took quite a bit longer. We also learned another lesson, and this one, it's not necessarily in my deck. When you're working with Unreal Engine, our first script we also found was overly ambitious. It had 9 different scenes. It had whole different characters. It had 3 different classes of robots. It had lasers, and it was a lot. It crushed our production pipeline, and it really, really put a lot of pressure on our animators. The story was cool. I wrote it. I loved it. But it really wasn't fair to the production team because they had to produce, a stewardess who turned into a giant robot. Like it was very, very challenging. So what we found also is just like prompting a generative AI, whether it's going to be text, whether it's going to be art, figuring out what you're going to ask this to do in advance is really going to help you keep from going off the rails, being overly ambitious. Limit your scenes. Don't try and do too much if you're trying to do it on a fixed budget. So some considerations. Anytime you're using free or online tools, which are incredibly tempting, and I'm not suggesting that you use free or online tools for your company's production pipeline, you really need to be careful about what it's generating. And I'm not an Adobe shill or anything like that, but Adobe Firefly is trained on licensed images, so anything it produces is going to be your property if you're a licensed customer. Whereas if you're using some online tools, they may generate something that steps over the line and violates copyright. You really need to think about that. Also, even if you're using a tool that you feel like is 100% safe, set up a legal review within your company so that your attorneys look at anything before you put your logo on it and put it out the door. I'm lucky to have a really flexible and open-minded legal team who work with us on every single publication we make so that we can make an homage without copying somebody straight up, without violating somebody else's brand. I also have to train people every day on brands being misused. Cybercriminals do not care if they misuse somebody's brand. So they will ape your brand, they will pretend to be you to try and get in somebody's mailbox and deliver a malicious payload. So my team is hypersensitive about the misuse of logos. We work with our legal team. And AI does not have that concept. They will put you in legal peril and not think twice about it. So if you're not careful before you sell anything or present something for your company that an AI made, do a quick legal review. Just cover your bases. And then third, don't share sensitive stuff with an AI that you don't control the infrastructure. So if it's a service running on the internet, don't give it sensitive corporate information. Don't give it sensitive IP. Don't give it information about yourself because it's going to use that information to train itself and it may end up in the output that it gives somebody else down the road. It may not be immediately, but it'll be someday. So finally, I've got 3 takeaways, and then we'll open this up to any further questions that we have. Is that number 1, AI tools can substantially increase the quality and efficiency of your content creation pipeline. So faster, better. It's fantastic. But they're not the magic bullet. They're not going to solve all your problems. You still need creative people. But what I found from a business standpoint, like I said, I'm director of product. I'm not lead artist for Cofense. I'm a business guy. Is that you can get way more out of your much happier artistic people by giving them the tools to make their outputs more in line with what they have in their head that they can deliver faster. And they can feel a sense of progress instead of that person that's like, where's your art project coming? 3 months in, and it's still not done. Now they can say, yeah, I'm on my 5th publication, and customers are already deploying it. And then finally, these capabilities are constantly expanding and evolving. Any of you that were kind enough to take notes or take pictures, it's probably going to be out of date by the time you decide to use it. We're constantly evolving our tool set. We are, my lead instructional designer, Deb McCaffrey, is coming to me every week. We have a shared document where we're looking at tool evaluation and then tools that are being used that have published something. Each one of those is also, because of what we're required to do, we do legal review before we accept a tool. But the capabilities are just galloping with us. So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and go out there and be creative. And I hope that y'all found this helpful. And with that, I'll say, does anybody have any questions? Yes, please.
Yes, you had an example earlier of an email with a metahuman or a
Yes.
explaining the content of the email, what was done wrong. When you deploy that at a client side, do they give you a person that they want you to use to make the metahuman?
So actually that one, so her question was, in the example that I showed earlier where I had a little small digital person explaining the indicators of a compromise in a malicious email, was that from a customer saying, hey, we have Charlie who we want to be this. It's actually not a metahuman. So that one is actually a synesthesia avatar. So it's a different company. So they have a whole library of human avatars, high fidelity digital humans. They aren't technically metahumans. They're their own thing. They're proprietary avatar. Now, at a certain licensing structure, they'll let you create your own. So we could take 10 pictures of you from different angles, send them to them, and all of a sudden they would have an avatar that would look like you. So PhishMe, currently we don't offer that custom yet. But once again, this is one of those things where we're like, that's completely outside of our capability. 3 months later, that's our core offering. It's evolving that quick. So it's one of those things that's technically possible, but not yet commercially viable, if that makes sense.
For instance, I work in most of our calls, when we receive an email from the transfer, I can see what he would like.
Oh yeah. So PhishMe is more of an educational, it is an educational tool, but for the use case you're talking about where the chancellor is addressing everybody, synesthesia, yeah, well, not just that. You could have your chancellor's speech given to synesthesia. You could upload it. It could have his digital version of himself speaking to everybody embedded in this like that. That's how we did it in testing, was we gave it, the very first one was we made a fake Zoom call where we had a digital avatar saying, hey, I got this weird email from you. Did you really send this to me? It was a business email compromise back and forth. And they were like, it looks weird in these ways. And we just sort of simulated a regular business interaction like you would have over Slack or Teams or Zoom. So it was an actual dramatic script in that regard. So synesthesia can totally do that. That's their bread and butter. But in PhishMe, we use it as a tool to generate video content that is explanatory in that way.
You go back to the 5 steps to become sure.
Yeah. So building a durable, I hope I can do this. I can do it off the fly. Building a durable memory, right, is going to allow you to lead to an action. If an action is repeated enough, it becomes a habit. Oh, forgive me. I don't mean to go too fast. Yeah. Durable memory goes to an action. Repeated actions become habit. If you build enough habits, it becomes a culture. Habits and enough people become a culture. So if everybody is really invested in, I work at company X, and what it means to work at company X is I treat cybersecurity seriously. I treat it as much of a threat as fire in the office, which it absolutely is. All it takes is one email delivering the wrong kind of payload, and you can be out on the street. And I don't mean to be alarmist. It's just the nature of what it is. So, good question. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Well, 9 minutes early. Thank you all very much for coming. I really appreciate it. So fun.